I mean, what do you want me to say? It's good as fuck. Okay, so usually in a lot of my videos, I kind of open it by saying, oh, this game is a massive revolution and did so much for the genre. And I'm going to try to skip that fluff talk, not because it isn't innovative, but like, it's Portal. Do I really need to be like, man, the genius who came up with this idea? Like, people who don't play video games know what Portal is. If they even know what it is, do I really have to like go into detail about how crazy it is? Also, I kind of say it in a lot of my videos. Like, if you go back and watch any of my old Halo videos, I continually use the word innovative and revolution, and it kind of makes it hard for me to go back and watch those videos. So, I'm just going to use different words to describe my opinions on a game. So, without further ado, let's talk about why this game is fucking awesome. I mean, yeah, to break it down, you play as a nameless vessel in a science lab run by a robot named GLaDOS with artificial intelligence. It's really cool and fun, and GLaDOS keeps things interesting by talking to you, but you sense something uneasy going on in the background. I feel like it's not just the gameplay that makes it so fun. A lot of the little details add up to make the whole experience great. A pretty obvious example is how GLaDOS is represented in the game. At first, she's this pretty generic corporate robot who gives you instructions and then compliments you for following said instructions. But as you go on, she starts to feel more threatening and condescending, which could be thanked because of the level design. I mean, the beginning of the game has this nice corporate shine to it all, with everything looking and functioning perfectly. But the more you go into it, the more you notice some holes. First, you find this crevice on Puzzle 17, and you make your way through underneath it, and you find out all the corporate sheen is covering up this gross metallic, dimly lit room. And the walls are covered in all this chicken scratch about how the cake is a lie, the cake is a lie. And with that and the more condescending feeling you get, you sense something bad's gonna happen. And along with your tension of GLaDOS rising, you get to learn more about her character. It's mentioned earlier that the last time there were a bunch of humans in the facility, it was Bring Your Daughter to Work Day. But you also learned that was the same day she flooded the whole place with a deadly neurotoxin that killed all of them. And it's not just atmospheric or story details within the level design that helps the story, it's the accessibility of the concept that helps it. At the beginning of the game, it teaches you everything from a very fundamental level. It starts off with stationary portals for you to get used to the idea, then having control over one portal, then two portals. So that way, over the first test chambers, you're not overwhelmed with a bunch of information, and you're able to take the time to understand what everything is. At the same time, it doesn't cram a bunch of story down your throat either. They're just really well-made tutorials on how you can use the portal gun effectively and don't go overboard. They don't even like complicate it at all or try to make it like crazy insane. The main puzzles you solve in this game are with switches and cubes, electric balls that power other objects, and the forward momentum of your body. They're really easy concepts for anyone to understand, even if it's your first video game ever. And when I say it like that, you think, well man, if it's so simple, then what fun is it? Well, that's the trick up Portal's sleeve. They make it incredibly easier to understand, but then they get really creative with how far they can push the concept of some of these levels. I mean, at first, the puzzle really is put the weight on the switch, power up the generator, fling yourself forward. But then it combines everything into a really smart way to make for some of the most ingenious puzzles in a video game. And so far in this review, I described the story and gameplay separately about how they're both not very crazy or bombastic with how they present it to you, and how they're really simple, but they push the ideas pretty far in ways that stick out in your mind. And sure, a lot of games do that. I can remember a lot of games with really good stories or really fun mechanics that I don't feel like too much. So why am I emphasizing it so hard in this review? Well, even though it's presented in a really simple way, the pacing and what they show you is what makes it so memorable. And I'm pretty sure the people I told to experience this game blind for the best experience have probably already left this review, but just in case you're still here, I want to give you another warning for the story, alright? Okay, so cool, yeah, the big plot twist is GLaDOS was the bad guy and wants to kill you. And I feel like a lot of people know that. I mean, even I knew that when I was going into this game 2 years ago. But even when I was aware there was going to be a twist, it still felt really crazy when it happened. And I want to bring that back to the main point because everything all comes back to pacing. The story and levels themselves are packed together to lift both of each other up. You can't have one without the other. Sure, there are mods for Portal with some really good ideas like Portal Reloaded, but playing through it doesn't have the same feeling Valve's Portal has because there's no Portal story to supplement its gameplay. And don't get me wrong, it's really fun to solve puzzles in a Portal game, but it feels more interesting and engaging when you have this looming sense of mystery that GLaDOS brought to the table. You want to solve the puzzles because you want to know what happens when you reach the end, and why there's chicken scratch on the walls, and why they're throwing things like live turrets at you when you're just supposed to be a simple test subject. So as the gameplay expands, so does the story, and it all comes to a climactic boom when GLaDOS tries to force you into that pit of fire, because you're taking everything you've learned from the gameplay and you're implementing it as you're trying to escape with GLaDOS doubting and threatening you.
What are you doing? You haven't escaped, you know. You're not even going the right way.
And overall, because of the brilliant pacing between gameplay and story, it leaves with not only a fun game, but a really memorable experience. It's one of those games that even people outside of gaming know about and are fascinated with. And the way everything's set up, it has such consistent perfection from start to finish that you think there's no way they could come up with anything better. And then Valve said, yeah, that game's cool, but what if we took the concept you liked, made it twice as long, had a much bigger scale, had much more in-depth ideas, a variety of locations, more lore, a bigger budget, and why the hell not? An entirely separate multiplayer campaign that's the same length as regular Portal 2, with all new story and levels. Okay, so I'm not going to waste a bunch of time with Portal 2 here. It's Portal 1 but expanded upon. Portal 2 is not the simple little game the first one was trying to be. It has way more going on. The first thing I noticed immediately was the quality of a lot of basic things were improved upon. The menu system here is so much cleaner than the first Portal. The menus felt like it was using Internet Explorer, and these loading screens were just ripped straight from Half-Life 2. And I mean, it doesn't really matter what a menu looks like, no one really cares. But when you look at Portal 2's menus, you just notice the quality is better. The menu setups look a lot more custom and professional, and these loading screens are just straight up really nice to look at. But I'm going to be honest, even though the loading screens are nicer than the first one, they make the game feel a lot less seamless than it should. There are a lot of parts where you're just going through a door or falling down holes, and you just see an instant loading screen that pops up that kind of puts the game on halt for 15 seconds, but that's kind of a nitpicky complaint. It's just something I noticed, and I thought it was cool, and I wanted to share it. Another thing improved upon in this game is the cinematics. In general, the game has this more grandiose feeling, and it just feels really brought to life with these cutscenes. Like the part where the big door is being opened, or GLaDOS being revived, or Wheatley getting control of the lab. It's just really well animated, and a lot of these moments are carried by Stephen Merchant and Ellen McLean's voice acting. Wheatley's dumb and fun friendliness and stupidity, contrasted against GLaDOS' extremely cold and threatening intelligence, kept the game really engaging and fun the entire ride. Or sometimes there is no speaking, and the visuals and soundtrack do all the talking for you. And it's not just the stuff they push to the forefront, a lot of the other things help this. The use of lighting and other various effects really help the graphics pop in a way that helps make the game feel more cinematic. They made all these set pieces feel so grand and meaningful, with everything put together to make the facility feel a lot larger and lifelike. Kind of like what they did with Black Mesa and Half-Life. Also, when I say everything feels more grandiose, that can be taken literally for better or worse. I mean, there's a lot of places that feel grand in this game, and places that feel unnecessarily massive. Like annoyingly big to the point where it just takes too long to get to the actual puzzle solving part of the game. I mean, when you're in the modern facility, it's not really an issue. Things are grand, but it's still able to consistently have something for you to do. And then you get down to the older facility, and that's where it actually becomes a problem for me. There's just a bunch of parts down there where it isn't an actual puzzle solving thing. It's just look around this big ass facility and look for a really small white spot to keep moving forward, or find a way to fling yourself across the map. I mean, that's not to say there's nothing interesting down here. I'm just saying they use that as a way to break the pacing of, oh, jump down this pit, or oh, look for a way across, to break up from like the actual puzzle part of the game, to the point where it just ruins the pacing. Because most puzzles I feel like you can solve in about 3 to 8 minutes, and then you're just looking around for a while trying to find out how to get across the 50th hole in the floor. And I'm not just gonna whine, I'll give them credit where credit is due. Some of them actually are really creative. There's this part where you take the speed gel to create momentum to fling yourself across the other side, or how you use moon gel to create walls for you to use to get to higher ground. And speaking of gels, this game has like a billion new ideas that blows Portal 1 way out of the water. In the first game you had cubes, switches, electricity, and momentum. Really simple ideas that could get you to easily understand the portal gun. But Portal 2, you got lasers, light beam bridges, glass cubes that shift light, floaty beam thing, and like I said earlier, the gels. The developers had way more ideas and implemented all of them, but that doesn't mean the puzzles are overly difficult. They're still incredibly understandable on how you could get things done, even if they are pretty complicated. And you know, if we're going to talk about expansions from Portal 2, I gotta talk about the story. The original Portal story was pretty basic. You're a test subject in your cell solving puzzles for a robot, and you later realize it wants you dead. So you go around the facility trying to get out alive. Portal 2 is way grander. I don't want to spoil it, but I do want to convey how much greater it feels. You wake up 50,000 years in the future trying to get out of the facility again, only to see that GLaDOS is back. After trying to escape, you get pushed way far underground in an attempt to be murdered, and deep down you discover a really old version of Aperture Science from the 60s. And from there you get tons of backstory on everything about the Portal universe. That's what I meant by more expansive. They answered a lot of the questions that a lot of people had based on the first Portal. Where did GLaDOS come from? What is Aperture Science? Why are there even experiments like this in their world? Stuff like that gets explained and expanded upon, and even though I complained about the pacing down here, story-wise, learning more is what kept me going, even if there were a lot of moments that did drag between puzzles. And we can't forget about the extras option. I love this place. It's actually really cool. It has a bunch of videos and trailers for Portal 2, like teasers and Aperture Science propaganda, kind of like the gravity boots or the twin robot testing, and they even added this cool comic book just for fun. And scrolling down here, I learned about Super 8, which is an interactive demo that's actually pretty cool as fuck. I didn't really know what it was at first. I thought it was like supposed to show off the physics of the engine, kind of like, oh, we did this as like a test build, and then this is what Portal 2 looks like. But it's not like the source engine was anything new at this point, so I looked into it, and apparently J.J. Abrams was making a movie called Super 8. It's a movie about aliens, and in general, he was a big fan of Valve's work, and would tease and reference it in his own work. So I guess they worked together to create this demo to promote his movie, and from this, there was either going to be a Half-Life or a Portal movie worked on. So I mean, hey, you learn something new every day, right? They even added a create your own test chamber type of mode along with it too. I haven't actually tried to make a test chamber because I'm way too dumb to figure out how to make a good puzzle, but I have played some of the top chambers on the search engine, and Jesus Christ, these people are goddamn Einsteins. I was able to do 3 chambers and then got stuck on my 4th one, but still, these puzzles are insanely creative and very, very difficult to figure out. I don't think I'll ever consistently do player created levels because, to put it simply, I'm kind of a dumbass, but I can see a ton of people getting their money's worth having a new puzzle to come back to every day. And that's a lot of the main stuff that changed from Portal 1 to 2. A bigger, more realized world with tons of new ideas to try to be even greater than what the first game tried to accomplish. But, of course, I'm missing the biggest thing that sets Portal 2 apart from the first one, and that's multiplayer. Honestly might have been the best idea Valve has ever had, because it takes everything you love about Portal, the story, the puzzles, the environment, and allows you to piss off your friends at the same time.
You're such a fucking dickhead. Alright, crew, go.
You're so fucking... And it didn't even work.
What? How did you... I did it all on myself, not gonna lie. Bro, we can't go through the fucking door.
No, please, I have a family. See, all my idea.
Dude. You fucking...
Puzzle. Oh my god. Honestly, AJ, I'm really glad your parents stopped loving each other when you I think that human element of being able to work together as a team or be a piece of shit adds to the whole experience. And gameplay wise, yeah, these are really good puzzles. There aren't any new concepts, they just took the puzzles from the single player campaign and retooled them to have you work together. Instead of having to get a cube, you have one person stand on it and help pull each other further. You combine all 4 portals together to create some like contraption to get you further ahead. And there's so many puzzles that there's gonna be at least 50 plus in here. But one thing they have here that I genuinely really like is that there's no fat in between gameplay. Coming back to the Portal 2 is sometimes too big complaint, that issue is completely remedied. There are still story beats here and there, but it's like a set of levels so that it's back-to-back puzzles with no filler in between. So instead of having to find your way across another dumb fucking gap, you can just solve the puzzles. Thank you. And that's all there is to cover. The Portal games are monumental giants that are great for their own reasons, but the one big one is that it just grabbed people. No matter how experienced you are, you could pick this up and immediately start having fun. And it did garner a huge community. There are tons of Portal mods like Portal Reloaded, as I mentioned earlier. And just like Half-Life, people would dissect the hell out of these games. Oh, and one last thing I want to talk about with Portal is this. This is fun.